Well, delighted to get a few minutes with Stuti, who will be joining SKIMS as an e-commerce coordinator in a few months. Stuti, thank you so much for your time.
Hi, Viraj, and hi, everyone else. It's a pleasure to be here. This is one of my firsts. So I'm really happy to talk about my experience, and I hope whatever comes out of this is helpful to anyone who's hearing this right now.
Perfect. Let's start with a quick introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I was born and brought up in India, and I came to New York to pursue my college degree. I graduated about 2 weeks ago as the class of 2022 from New York University's Leonard and Stern School of Business. And I am a Bachelor of Science, and I double concentrated in marketing and data science.
Got it. And you just graduated, right? So you're soon going to be joining your full-time role. Can you talk a little bit about, the role that you have at SKIMS?
Sure. So I was always really passionate about the fashion and luxury retail industry as a whole. And I knew that straight out of college, that's where I wanted to go. And SKIMS, I feel for me, it's just started about 3 years ago. As we all know, it's Kim Kardashian's brand. So it definitely had the glamour behind it and the pull. But it also had a lot of resources available and growth opportunity because it's about a mid-sized company right now, 150 to 200 people. So it's growing really quickly, given how well the brand and the product's doing. And I knew that I wanted to get more onto the digital side of things, even while recruiting. And just as a general idea, I've seen that marketing, how we do campaigns, I think is becoming a little old just because of how much data we're exposed to. And everyone wants to move their campaigns to a more digital platform just to have a larger, consumer base, just to reach international people and not so much in the US. So I knew that I wanted to shift gears a little bit from general marketing and traditional marketing more towards a digital platform. And I think website marketing for that is really important because that's the experience everyone's looking to have today, the comfort from having to order at home. So I just thought I wanted to work on something that would be a little bit more relevant a few years down the line. And I think that's what really drew me towards the e-commerce position.
Perfect. Let's go back to your time as an undergrad. When did you start searching for full-time job opportunities? And maybe this is going to be more about maybe the internship search that you had, and then also maybe like the full-time opportunity that you kind of pursued in your fourth year. It could be the mix of both. But when was the first time that you kind of started searching for full-time job opportunities in the US?
Right. So I can give a little bit of a background of what I've done so far, just so we have a general understanding of where I started. Right after my freshman year, I was in India for the whole summer, and I was working for my father's company. It's called Mayur Unicoaters Limited, and they're a synthetic leather manufacturing company. But that is when I began to realize that maybe that was not really my calling, and I wanted to stick a little bit more towards fields I was interested in, like retail. And that was also more a B2B business. That's when I sort of had more of a realization that B2C was something, a business to consumer business was something that I wanted to address in my future. And then the second year, COVID hit, so I had to come back home. But I ended up working at the Body Shop in India as their social media and digital marketing intern. And I think that was the first time I really understood that digital marketing is where I wanted to go from there. And then my third summer was finally in New York. And I ended up working for this place called Within. So it's a health and wellness company, and it's based in traditional Chinese medicine. And to be very real, I think with everyone, I just ended up going to LinkedIn, and for this opportunity, it didn't take me very long. I was just browsing through marketing intern opportunities for the summer, and I just ended up sending out my resume to a couple of places. And just in terms of transparency, I think I was very late with the process. My third summer, my classes were getting over around 20th May, and I had only a contingency period of about 15 to 20 days to apply for my internship, because we have to go through the CPT process about then. So I was actively looking for jobs, but I think just because COVID was still looming around the corner, like the market wasn't so hot, nobody was really looking to hire at all, let alone international students. And I didn't hear back from a lot of internship places. But I think the day of my deadline for the CPT, I heard back from within. I just submitted my resume to them. And during my interview call, I was just like, I'm going to be really honest, like, this is my last day. So if you can give me your offer today, like, I can work as your intern, or I'm sorry, like, I won't be able to go forward with it. And my manager of the time, she had just joined as the brand manager, and she was an amazing person in hindsight to work with. But she was completely understanding of that process, and she loved my experience at the Body Shop. And given that Within had started just a little bit before COVID and was getting a grasp over its social media, um, she just wanted to make sure that I could be a part of the team, and she ended up extending the offer to me. So to be very honest, I got really lucky with the internship, because it was quite the last minute thing that worked out. But after the summer, I ended up extending it up until December, just because it had been an amazing experience for me.
Got it. And in regards to the full-time opportunity, when did you start searching for those opportunities?
So I think I learned a little bit from my summer experience, and I was like, I don't want to do this again. I started recruiting January end, once I came back to New York after my winter break. And I understand that with finance and banking, recruitment starts pretty early on. So that's the summer before, or at times even 2 years before your full time starts. But for marketing, I saw a hike in postings for job openings right after February mid, like towards the end of February. And to be very honest, I think with marketing, people are more open to hire when you are much sooner to join and start
Yeah.
working early on than later. Because even when I did like interviews in March, April, people were like, we want you to join ASAP. Um, so even though I started recruiting January and February beginning, I think my employers were more receptive to having me as an employee. I'd say like April.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did start then, like January end.
Got it. Got it. So that was the timing when you actually started searching for full-time opportunities. I think you touched a little bit on the next question, but how did you initially approach your job search? Was there anything in particular that you were doing, perhaps, like you mentioned for internships, you were just browsing through LinkedIn? When it comes to full-time opportunities, what different avenues or like what different approaches you kind of followed through to search for full-time opportunities?
Of course, I'd be happy to speak to that. So for me, Stern has a tie-up with Handshake, and that's a job posting platform. Also, it's a career network for students, for anyone who doesn't know that. But what happens is, I think Stern is a very finance-heavy school, and it's known to propagate that sort of career field. Um, so Handshake, to be really honest, didn't have very many jobs for marketing, and especially the avenues I was looking at, fashion, as previously mentioned. So I think I relied very heavily on LinkedIn to get me through my job search, and a lot on the business of fashion. It's also a platform for very avid fashion readers and people who would like to know about the luxury retail industry. And they often have job postings for coordinators or entry level positions worldwide. So I would just narrow down my search to the United States and look at job postings. So I think those were the two platforms that I really looked up to when I wanted to, find new listings or look at new opportunities. But I think at that point, I just wanted to make sure that I landed a job. So I also went back to all the old contacts I had, maybe from networking or from meeting people, for coffee chats a little bit, or even my friends who I knew had worked at certain places and their job profiles looked interesting to me. So I would just make sure to send my resume and a cover letter to all my friends just so they could forward it to their managers or to their HR people. And then, of course, go through LinkedIn and Business of Fashion as well.
Got it. Phenomenal. So I think you spoke about, like the two avenues you took to search for jobs. One was, of course, through networking, and the other one was through the two different portals that you kind of found. Looking back now, would you have done something different, or would you have changed the approach you took for searching for jobs?
I think with my journey, at every point there was growth because I was adding something new to my job search journey. And I think to look back at it, I could say that maybe I could have started more aggressively in the beginning. I think by March and April I was really going at it with, connecting with people over LinkedIn, whereas in the beginning I was more so just putting in my application everywhere. But I do genuinely believe that um, the things I learned over the journey was what informed me right at the very end and what landed me the job. So I wouldn't say I'd change anything about it because I really appreciated myself going from, just sending in 5 applications a week and thinking, wow, I've done so much this week, to, changing it to 10 applications a day and thinking I still need to push myself harder. So I think that's somewhere when you're coming closer to the finish line, you realize that this is where I need to put in more effort, or this is the time where the market's not so hot for me. So you just have to, I think, barter time with yourself and see this is the amount I'm willing to spend. So I think in hindsight, like, I was very okay with my journey, even though while I was doing it, I would fall back a little bit and, stress myself out thinking that, this was not working out for me. And you constantly have a lot of negative thoughts. You're watching people on LinkedIn, your classmates, and they're sharing posts like, oh, I'm so happy to announce, and I'm so excited to share, and like, you're happy for them, but you're also, like, it's very easy to get swept away by those. But I think holistically it worked out quite well for me, and I think it's really important to see like where you stand in your journey and what works for you, and just not think about what everyone else is doing.
Got it. Phenomenal. What did you do to actually get the interviews from the companies you applied for? I mean, I know that, just in general, like, when we approach job search, we of course apply online, or we kind of try to find the way of applying through a referral or networking with people. Was there anything in particular that you were doing to get the interviews from the companies you applied for?
Right. So I had this very straightforward process. And I am also an organizational maniac. So I had these Excel sheets. And what I would do is every time I would apply for a job on LinkedIn, I would write down the company name in one column, the job position, and the date I applied, just so that I could track everything. And I could go back to see when I'd applied in case I needed to send up a follow-up email. So then what I would do is right after I applied to the job, I would go to the company website on LinkedIn, and I would look at people, and I would filter the people page by my university, my location, and also the kind of roles I was interested in. So if I was, for example, applying for a marketing coordinator, I would look up the marketing manager for that brand, or the HR specialist that was recruiting for marketing jobs. And what I would do is I would actively try to search for their email online. There are a lot of sources online that generate their emails or give you an idea of what it could look like. But I also did not find that very reliable. So what I started doing was I started reaching out to them on LinkedIn, and I had a very short template of what I'd want to say. And it would just read like, hi, I'm Stuti, like, I'm a senior at Stone. I concentrated in this and this, and I'm really interested in this aspect of your company. If you're free in the coming days, like, I would love to schedule a 15-minute call with you and love to hear about your experience. Like, thank you so much for your time. And I was surprised at the number of people who would get back to me on LinkedIn, because that worked astoundingly well for me. And I really appreciate all the people who did get back to me. So that right after applying for my job, I would reach out. And then the people who would get back to me, I would add those people to my LinkedIn page as well, beside the company I applied to, just so I knew the people I could connect with from that company, or any potential referrals I could get from them. So what I would do is I would, once I got the call with them, I would use it as a networking call. So I would introduce myself, talk about my past experiences, everything that I've studied so far, and how I believe it can be useful to a potential job that could come out of that call, and hear a little bit about what they do in their day-to-day lives, like ask a few questions about the company. And then in the end, I would be sure to mention that, hi, so like I applied for this job, and I like after this call, I feel that this is something that could really work for me, because I do believe that these aspects of the company, really cater to my needs. And if they could put in a referral for me, that would be great. Um, so this was one approach for me that I used the most. But also, any companies that did not have job postings that were applicable to me, I would do the networking calls first,
Mhm.
and then ask them to refer me to any internal company openings that they thought was applicable to me. So like it could be inside out and outside in for me as well. Sorry. But I definitely believe that I got most of my interviews through networking calls and referrals. I'd say about 2 to 3 big companies were through the application process, but about a good 8 to 10 of them were through referrals. So I highly recommend it. It really helps you.
Got it. That's a phenomenal piece of advice, and also just the journey that you expressed in regards to what you were doing step by step, how you would approach on LinkedIn, and the specific details that you mentioned. It's just phenomenal to kind of hear, and I think like international students would love to learn about that. How did you prepare for the interviews that you got?
Um, okay, I'm going to be really honest here, and I don't think that's a very traditional thing to say. So I think everyone knows that there's a behavioral interview and there's a technical interview. I would always just have a few pointers at the top of my mind that I would just put down on my notes. I do not avidly believe in, having paragraphs and paragraphs written for behavioral interviews, because I think it really does come off when you're trying to be wrote through notes. Like a person can sense the vibe and they know that you're reading. But of course, there are certain points that you want to address about your journey, which can be very overwhelming when you're giving an interview. You're nervous, you want to make sure you cover all points. So what I would do is I would write phrases on my notes, just so I knew that I was getting through everything that I wanted to sell about myself. But again, I would refrain from writing down answers and big answers per se to all the questions, just because I wanted to frame it the way it came off naturally on spot. And I think that worked better for me, because it looked like I was having more of a conversation than, giving a speech about my journey. And I think it also helped me, like divert the conversation or change it or modify it based on the need of, what we were like speaking of in the minute. So if I wrote learn something, maybe it could only go in one direction, versus, and again, like this is just my belief, it could definitely work for some other people. But I think having just the headliners of what I had to say gave me clarity on everything I had to cover, but also gave me the freedom to navigate through the conversation as I wanted. And as for the technical, I think with marketing, there are some very basic questions that they want you to address. So if you go online and you just say technical marketing entry level questions, there are a ton of websites that can help you out with it. And I think for me, it was really also important to brush up on marketing basics right when I was going into interviews. So I would refer back to my class notes a little bit to see something that really stood out to me in class. And I would make sure to mention that during my call, and I would say, like, yeah, this is where I see marketing right now. And even with my e-commerce position, I mentioned that I think data in a big way is coming into marketing campaigns, because we need data to prove that the campaigns that we're using are successful in some way or the other and is backed up logistically. And that is where I see marketing going in the future. And that's why I want to do e-commerce. So I would always have this comparison of what I think marketing is now and what I envision it to be in the future. And I think that would make a really interesting conversation for me always, because I would hear the recruiter's perspective or how marketing has evolved in their journey. So I definitely believe that they really appreciated the digital aspect of it. And I really saw a spike in the number of people who wanted to shift marketing more towards digital campaigns. So yeah, like if someone's hearing this 10 years down the line, and if you're already big on digital, maybe think about the next thing that interests you. And that's something that really changes the conversation and adds something new to it.
Phenomenal. How did you come across your specific role of the e-commerce coordinator at SKIMS?
So to be really honest, I think in the beginning I was looking at more. Um, so I think I broke down my job search also into the brands I wanted to apply to, like fashion brands or like beauty and cosmetic brands, and then again like marketing agencies I could apply to, like Ogilvy, Kepler. So within marketing agencies, the entry level position, it's called an account assistant, where you're handling accounts, or an account coordinator, and then you're divided by industry. So I was focusing on those, and then I was focusing on marketing coordinator or marketing associate roles for brands. Um, and there were also some data analyst brands for the agencies that were doing digital marketing solely for other companies, and they were like third parties. So that is what I was addressing in the beginning. And then I realized that the requirements in terms of experiences were very similar for data analysts or like digital marketing associates as they were for e-commerce positions. And I, at that point, I think um, this was after mid-April that I realized the similarities between these jobs. And I was like, I would love to navigate. I would love to expand my job opportunities and, just like dip my toes a little bit in e-commerce, because that's also a really hot market right now. Um, and I think I came across one e-commerce position. I'm not sure for which company, but when I spotted the similarities, I solely did it to expand my opportunities, like the potential that I had to get a job. And I just randomly started applying for e-commerce positions. And that's when I came across Skims. And it's so uncanny for me because I had spent hours and hours filling 9 pages of job applications where you're required resumes, like past job experience, past education, and you have to fill it all manually online. And funnily enough, Skims was easy apply. And I think it's a certain mentality that when you see easy apply on LinkedIn, you're like, this is not going anywhere, because like 600 people are clicking on easy apply. You just have to send in your resume. Like, there's no guarantee that someone will get back to you. And every time I see easy apply, I just go on the company website, click on careers, and try to find that job posting so that it goes through the company and not alongside 700 people. But I just ended up doing it. I was like, I didn't find it on the Kim's website. I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So I clicked on easy apply and it worked out quite well for me. So
Got it. That's phenomenal. And how did you get the interview for this role? I mean, I know you mentioned that you just applied through LinkedIn. Was it just a LinkedIn apply and then you got an interview call?
yes. So my manager, she is the senior product manager at Skims right now. She reached out to me saying that she received my resume from HR, and that she wanted to schedule a call. Like, she'd loved my past experience and she wanted to discuss it further. So that was my first call. And then the week I had the call with my manager, I was sure to let her know that I was traveling to Los Angeles the week after, and that I would love to meet her in person, regardless of whether I got the job or not. And she said, yeah, she'd get back to me on that. And this is really uncanny and it sounds very dramatic. But the minute I landed in Los Angeles, I just like turned my airplane mode off. And the first notification was her inviting me for a second interview with the vice president, and saying that she would love to have me in person, but through the week. And this was like a Monday afternoon. And I was like, well, I'm only here Monday and Tuesday, like, but I would still love to meet. the president in person. And a Monday night at like around 5:30, 6 p.m., she confirms that I'm on for a call on Tuesday in the morning, in person with the VP. And yeah, I think there's a certain amount of luck that also goes into your job process for things to align so perfectly and so quickly. So yeah, I think there are some days that it just happens for you.
That's phenomenal. And I think what you mentioned about you taking the initiative to be in Los Angeles and actually willing to meet your potential manager, knowing that, it can go either way. Like maybe you might get a job, maybe you might not get a job, but still your willingness to kind of meet the person in real life. That just kind of, I think, shows the company how approachable and how willing you might be for that role, which is great. And also, like, it kind of follows through.
Yeah, sure. I think I want to give a quick shout out to my dad right now, because he was in New York visiting me for graduation when I had my first interview. And I don't know for what reason, he just kept on pestering me to tell them that I was going to be in LA. And I was like, Dad, like it's 1 week later. There's no way they're going to get back that fast. Companies take about 2 to 3 weeks. And he's like, okay, for me, like just for my satisfaction, tell them you're going to be in LA. And I was like, no, like it's still COVID. Like this job is like hybrid. I don't want to push her. And he's like, okay, but please just do it. And then I was like, okay, like, I'll be in LA. So till date, he's just like, oh, you have this job because I suggested so and so. So this is a quick shout out to him. Thank you, Dad. Like it really worked out perfectly because of him.
Got it. Perfect. So what was the interview process like? I know you mentioned that, you spoke to your manager first, and then you had an on-site interview with the vice president. Anything else that happened in the interview process?
Um, I really think that my manager was extremely friendly and open during my interview process. So she was willing to talk to great lengths about the company, start like anywhere from what my day to day would look like to any DEI initiatives like diversity and inclusivity initiatives they were taking, to like what a mentorship program would look like for beginners. And just because she was so extremely outgoing and made it an extremely comfortable environment, I think that was the biggest selling point for me, because ultimately you're working a 9 to 6 Monday to Friday, and you want to be in a friendly environment. And I think just having that really open conversation, it was actually a lot more a conversation than it was an interview, where I felt like someone was constantly grilling me. That really pulled me to it. And I think that was something really similar with the VP. Our interview started with a small chat about the places I was hitting on the West Coast, and how long she had been there. And I think something that, really surprised her, or like she didn't see coming, was I had done a little bit of research on her on LinkedIn as well, and see like the places she had worked at. And she had worked for a largely tech company, like a very famous tech company. And then she had moved to, like Tart and SKIMS now. So it was like a major switch in terms of industry. And I think me having to know that, and like just asking her like what her journey was, like really took her by surprise. And she was like, oh, like you've done your research. So that's something that really stood out to her. And like I would definitely recommend that everyone do that, just so that they feel as important as you'd want to be to their company as well.
Phenomenal. And how long after your interview with the VP did you get the full-time offer?
I was really lucky, and I may be setting unrealistic standards over here. But I think she called me about 4 days later, and she said that we really loved you. We really don't want to delay it. We know that you're in the middle of other final interviews, but it was also the urgency of how badly they needed to fill this position that may have also led to this. And because I was an F1 student, I think that they knew that they had to go through a lot of paperwork. Also, SKIMS was amazing about my visa situation. 3 to 4 people in their C-suite are international. Are international, like my vice president, for example, is from London. She moved to the US. So amazing company for international students. If anything, if you are interested, please go out and recruit. Insane HR team, always helping you out. They reviewed everything from me with my like OPT card, I-20. They went through everything. They got everything approved and they got back to me. So yeah, the turnaround time was very quick and it was quite short.
Perfect. Any last piece of advice for any international student who might be listening to this podcast and is also looking for a full-time opportunity in the US?
I think it's very easy to lose sight of your worth in the process. And I can say this for myself and even my friends who are recruiting post graduation, that it's very easy to say that, oh, I feel like a failure because I'm not getting so and so opportunities when everyone around me has a full time job. But that's not true at all. It's just about finding the right fit. There are so many companies that I was attracted to before SKIMS, and I was really upset that some didn't work out because of my visa situation and not because of my capabilities.
Yeah.
And some didn't work out purely because my experience didn't match theirs. But it's just because it's not the right fit for you. And it's very difficult to see that as a present day moment. But in hindsight, when something does work out for you, like it did for me, I was so thankful that the others didn't, because for me, I think SKIMS is like the ultimate dream for me. Like, it's data science, it's website management, it's fashion, and it's a great brand. And I think it has a great message that it sends out to everyone. So it's just that you have to have trust in the process. And I think be really honest with yourself and with the company in terms of your salary expectations when you would like to join. I don't think anyone should cut themselves short or sell themselves in a lower salary range if they believe that they deserve to be paid higher. I think that we all bring something to the table, international or not. And I think as long as we like believe that we're capable of adding something to the role and we sell ourselves like that, you're bound to get it. But you have to have trust that you're a capable person who's also adding something to the company, and not someone who's desperately trying to seek a job, because it's adding to you're adding value to the company as well.
Perfect. That's a phenomenal piece of advice. Stuti, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate the insight that you've shared with us, especially your story as an international student in the US and how you landed a full-time opportunity. Thank you so much.